Barely.
Right. Thriving. Right.
We're
Good.
thriving.
You're
Well,
thriving?
I don't know if I'm thriving.
I'm sure not.
That's really ambitious, but
Yeah. We can dream.
right. I'm here. I actually feel pretty good.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Things have been a little interesting these past just the 2 days, which
Oh my
which
god.
happened. But I'll I'll let everyone get adjusted to the episode because I do want to tell a story. I have a really fun little story to kick off for today, but I'll wait till everybody gets
I'll
adjusted.
I'll say some things because I can talk about myself because there's very little I can actually go into. Um, my life has been supremely weird. It's getting weird when it's at the point where you don't feel like you can talk about it to most people because you're gonna sound like an insane person.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of magicians have had that stage happen in their craft before, and it's an interesting place to be. It feels almost like the quickening, like there's so many moving pieces and so much is happening and I'm getting pulled in, like, I wouldn't say so many directions. It's very clearly a single direction I'm getting pulled in, but there's a lot happening, and like I am worn the fuck out. I am tired, a little bit emotionally drained from, like, real talk. I was talking about this in my occult Discord. There's this thing that young magicians do where they wish that they want to be like powerful or different or like non-human or something, and it's like the more that I've gotten different from other people and the more I've realized how strange I am, the more I've become unrelatable, actually, and it's caused me more grief and issues than anything, right? Like, we as occultists tend to like prioritize this chasing of like a weird abstract, but that weird abstract often renders us like socially unable to relate to people outside of our fringe communities, which can become kind of a problem. Like, if I'm not talking to somebody who's like exceptionally well read in occultism, I can't really go into too much of my like personal practice or like what I've been through with all of that, or like talk about my worldviews, especially if I know they like run a 3D or like third dimensional reductionist model where like consciousness is centered as a fluke of the organic brain. Like, there's not really much I can talk with somebody who has a worldview that is like counter to like actual lived experience I have, right? So like I found that as a witch, there's a very good reason that we formed covens historically, because if you're remotely solitary in your practice and you don't have a reliable network of people to talk to, you become supremely strange, unrelatable, and isolated. And it's weird because I can like tell a lot of people like things I've been through, but very often they have to just kind of like take my word for it or like think I'm crazy, you know? So it creates an interesting positionality, like delving really far into an occult craft and having it become so much of like you and how you move through the world, you know? And I feel like it fundamentally changes you as a person in an unalterable way, you know?
Yeah, I do feel that. I guess it depends, I don't know, for me it's a little difficult because like my friend circle tends to like my friend circle is my spiritual circle, is my magic circle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, I guess I don't really encounter that same issue, but I do kind of know what you're saying. I do kind of encounter this a little bit at Pagan Pride events in particular,
Mm-hmm.
either ones that I'm running or ones that, I'm vending at or just attending. Sometimes it can be difficult, just meeting people out in the wild because you're like, I
Yes.
don't know where you are in your understanding of these things. And we also have to take into consideration too, especially at like a pagan pride event or just occultism in general, it draws people that are, like people that are just like, hey man, like I'm just pagan and like I have my garden and I have
Mm-hmm.
my little shrine to, Freya or something or whatever. I have my little shrine to the gods and, that's what I do. And you have people that are like, I did the LBRP in rapid succession 47 times over the course of, 13 new and like, you have people that do these very crazy, like ritualistic stuff. both I
Mm.
think are trying to achieve the same thing, like achieve this sense of like peace, like an inner like understanding and peace. But yeah, it is difficult to kind of like meet someone, where they are. Fortunately, like people do kind of give you cues and tells like right off the bat. Like you can kind of tell where someone is in their, I guess, like spiritual practice. Um it's kind of just based off things they say, but I know what you mean. It can feel a little alienating. We kind of talked about
It's
that a little bit when we talked about like intermediate like occult books before. How like you're
yeah.
not quite beginner, you're not like at master, level. You're like somewhere in this like journeyman phase in between, and you're like, well, where's like the meaty stuff?
But that also is depending on what you would consider meaty, because for some people
True.
that's purely a discussion of theory, so they can wrap their head around how they think their magic works. And
Mm,
for other people, that's an application of practice and how they can put it to like work so that they can understand the interrelation between them and that craft, right?
mm,
Hmm.
yeah.
You were gonna say
I
something, Scott?
No, I was going to say I think both of these issues. I actually understand both of these issues pretty well. Um, I think what to go off of what you were saying, Sophia, and I'll get to what Jay was saying in a second. I kind of was born uh, feeling very odd.
Weird.
Um,
Yes,
and
same.
Same.
my experiences even as a child were just not the same as everyone else. Mine were like, uh, you know, knowing things before they happened
Yep.
and talking to people about family members that have been dead for longer than I've been born. You know what I mean? Like, it was odd, and people were afraid of me, or they were angered by me. My presence alone often made people frustrated or uncertain. So even children, I used to talk about this in therapy a lot, where even young people would sort of immediately villainize me because they'd be like, there's something about you. I don't know what it is, but there's something about you. And I think it's because that when you and once again, I want to say this, I'm not like some fucking superhero. I'm not saying I'm something special. Nothing like that. I'm saying that I was born into a family with cunning on both sides, and I just inherently was born living between the here and the there, you know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
think that people have a sense of that. They don't know what it is. They don't have the vocabulary for it anymore like we used to. People
Mm-hmm.
did have a vocabulary for all these things, back in the day. Our ancestors kind of knew, you know what I mean? Oh, don't, even if it wasn't always nice, oftentimes they were met with like, oh, don't talk to them. They're a witch, or, they talk to the dead or whatever, right? But then they would, sneak off to them or pay them for help.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because they got the
but
sight. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But there's something about us that they can sense that also doesn't help. But like you said, Sophia, too, there is sort of this worldview difference that makes it really difficult. It's really hard trying to describe, like I was trying to say to a friend of mine who is like, he really struggles with spirituality and religion because he wants it to be true, but due to trauma and things, he has a really hard time. And I was saying to him about how, you know, certainly that if no one did rituals to the sun would still rise, right? But it would just be the sun rising, as we've said before in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the stories have an impact, they're important. And, the virtues and the potency of the sun has to be maintained as well. And it loses that without us because it's forgotten, and it diminishes, and that's why we do what we do. Um, so yeah, trying to get to know people who don't practice can be really difficult. And I also find that my closest relationships, my closest friendships, honestly, I say relationships because honestly, all of my friendships now, they're so long running that they're like family. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like Jay, like
Yeah, it's been a long
I
time.
don't really have, yeah, I don't really have like
Casual
acquaintances like
friends.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I have like people that like even with you, Sophia, like I can't wait to meet you one day. Like I can't
Oh,
wait to
I'd
have
love that.
like hang out and like actually spend time together.
Hmm.
Um, and so like and that they all tend to be either like At most spiritually curious, but like pretty much the vast majority of them are practitioners. Um, or like even come from it. Like a friend of Darian's, his I remember he didn't miss a beat when he came into my house the first time. His family are Golagichi, and he came
Mm.
in. He was like, "Oh, okay,
Eh,
this is the house I'm in." You know, he was like, "Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
it doesn't bother you." He's like, "My family's Golagichi. I'm not. No."
yeah,
He's like, "I don't
So
care."
I'm
the
good.
Um,
problem the problem I often run into is like my shit's just so different from other people, and there's just not people around that are like that, you know? Like I haven't run into them, I guess. I don't know. That's very lucky with Darian actually like coming in though and like already knowing what you're doing and not being intimidated, you know?
That was like one of the most nicest things about meeting him is that Darian like was having like a very like common witchy experience where he was like developing his own like divination system using playing cards, and
Mm.
he was like helping his friends, particularly for whatever reason, not keeping in mind, you know, completely untrained or whatever, but his system of reading could only be used for like relationships and wealth and like work and stuff.
Mm.
And it was accurate though. I mean, he was doing something. You know, I've talked to a few of his friends he read, and he was also doing a lot of energy work. He used to do this thing he told me where he would scry in puddles of water,
Mm. Mm.
Interesting.
and he was like having really accurate psychic hits through scrying in puddles of water on the sidewalk, which I thought was really cool. Um, and you know, it was a lot easier to talk to him about it because he was already into mythology and he was
Mhm.
already into energy work and psychic work. Um, yeah, and see that I mean, I was gonna say relationships, like romantic relationships too, can be really hard for me because
Oh, it's impossible.
I've had two incidents in my life where I've dated someone who was terrified of my witchcraft. Terrified. He what you call it?
Really?
He terrified of it. Terrified. He was raised
Ooh.
Catholic. He was
Mm.
he's Latino, and
Ah,
you know, he was, but not like not the, you know, not the kind of Latino where it's, you know,
where it's cool.
accepted, but
You're like,
the
yeah, like my mom
but
does
the,
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the kind of Latino that was really he was really scared, and
Mm.
it was really difficult trying to talk to him about it. You know, like there was towards the end of a very short sort of relationship. It was kind of I feel like it was kind of the end of it when he was like, "Can you just keep your stuff away from me?" He's like, "You can practice it on your own time, just don't bring it around me." And I was like, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah,
you know.
it's not gonna happen.
Um, and then one time, I was just talking, he really just talking to this guy who was a really, really obnoxious anti-theist,
Mhm.
and uh, that was just impossible. You know, I tried to like move around it, but when you're asking me questions, you're like, "How's your day? What did you do today?" Or like, you know, like I remember one time I had gotten home from Pagan Pride Day, and he was one time he like flipped his shit because I was like talking about spell work that I wanted to do, and he just was like, I don't get why you believe in all this bullshit. You know, and he just like went off, and it's like
Mm,
we've never talked after that. But like,
I would imagine
yeah,
not. It's kind of a very
it
nail in the
was,
coffin conversation.
yeah, it was, you know, I have a really hard time with that. Now, Jay, I do want to get to you. I'm so sorry I'm taking up so much time, guys. But
Don't.
No, talk. That's
Jay,
what we
to get back
do.
to to get to your point too, that also I find is very like egocentric practitioners who can't find a way to recognize that in the end these are all just these are don't get, I'm not trying to say that they're insignificant, but these are systems that we're using in order to engage the supernal and the divine. These are not like superior systems. These aren't like, you know, well, my gods are going to beat up your gods, right? This is like I'm engaging with this set of spirits that do this thing in this way, and this is how I engage it, right? And a lot of mature, non-ego centered and ego-driven practitioners are more than fine sitting in a circle of, you know, a ceremonial magician and a hoodoo, a root doctor, and a whatever, insert multiple practices here, right? Like when I worked at Harry's Occult Shop originally, there were people from all different traditions, and it worked for a long time. And then I remember this one time where, the ego got in the way of uh two well, really just one. This he was a he worked like Enochian magic. He was
Mm,
like big into Enochian angelic conjuration, and I think he worked a lot with like the Ars Notoria. I think that's the one with the
mm,
angels in it. Um, and he had really offensive opinions about the Loa to a Hungan that used to work there at
mm,
Harry's, and he like wanted he was he just had some like weird opinions, and the Hungan was like, "This is bullshit," and shut the fuck up. And it's like offensive, and it's kind of like at what point do you recognize that your system works as it is, completely unto itself, and doesn't cross over the way that you think it does, right?
mm,
Some might argue the point that, like, look at demonic conjuration, like daemons or daemons, right? Like a lot of them were gods
sure.
originally, like a lot of them were like Canaanite gods and stuff like that. But like the thing is that they've been worked in a way with that system that applies to them, right? It's not so far off removed from what they would have similar enough, you know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
It works because it was intentionally crafted that way. And years later, right? Like, I mean, the Solomonic tradition, technically speaking, is not as old as we like to think it is. The grimoires are old, but the Solomonic tradition, as we know it, is much newer than than Canaan and the ancient Israelites, but and the magic that they were doing. But it is difficult when you're also sort of have multi traditions in a space, and everyone's trying to kind of talk over
Mm,
and talk at. Um, I was listening to a conversation the other day about how people understand the word like witchcraft, and
mm,
how that definition has changed and changed and changed, and it means tons of different things, and what a witch is and isn't means different things to different people. And
sure.
then it kind of shuts down, but often I find that argument shuts down like any modern understanding of what a witch is, right? So like it's
Mm,
kind of like, well, that's just something new and stupid, right?
right.
If your witch isn't this diabolical thing, then if you're, oh, well, this whole thing about the witch is liberator and whatever, that's like new, that's blah, but like when it's the witch is something that rides you at night and rides you till you die, until you get sick, that kind of thing, right? Then
Mm,
suddenly it's acceptable. And all of that might exist in truth, because a lot of the time, as I said before, like the difference between a cunning person and a witch in Europe was the cunning person took the witchcraft off, and the witch was just putting a curse on you. They were doing the same thing though. So which pisses off a lot of people, but I don't care. Prove me wrong, and then we'll talk. We have found the black books
spicy.
of cunning people. We have not found the black books of a witch.
Right,
But interestingly enough, all the black books of cunning people had curses. So,
right.
1 plus 1 equals 2.
Like,
Um,
to undo a curse, you have to know how it's done.
right, right. How it's
Like,
right.
so.
So, I think that both of these things are issues that they're very similar on the face, for sure, and both of them are incredibly difficult. I prefer to get along in multi-discipline, multi-magical discipline spaces. I love having conversations with different people because that's what I grew up on,
Mm,
working at the occult shop. I prefer to be, like I'll never forget my teachers who were teaching me a little bit of conjure and root work, um, I would never like sit here and call myself a conjure doctor, but like, you
mm-mm.
know,
You
I
had the
learned a
Like,
little
experience.
bit about conjure, like I was told like there were parts, I know how to work a little conjure, you know what I mean? Like it is what it is. I'm not,
um,
it's not appropriation because they were Southern black women who taught me, you know what I mean? So, um,
You're
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
Sophia?
Mhm.
what I have an issue with in those spaces, though, is like I'm not really welcome there, if I'm being real honest with you, and what I've noticed. Anybody who practices a more modern tradition is very heavily met with skepticism by a lot of, not all, but a lot of more traditionalist practitioners. I've had people be like, how do you even know the spirits you're working with, you know? And it can get really unintentionally demeaning. You know,
Mhm.
there's a lot of traditional, air quotations, traditional occultists who, if you work a newer system, they'll often talk down to you, like you're working with spirits that are less coherent, or like you don't know what you're doing, or like something's wearing a mask around you. And I find that, like, because I work, or at least learn my chops of my stuff through chaos magic, the types of individuals I can work with are actually extremely few and far between, and they're not like in those spaces, right? Um, because typically we're not welcomed because people don't really make room for us or include our difference of opinions, and I just find myself naturally pushed out of those spaces, honestly. And if someone's really, I don't know, that's like also part of the thing too, is a lot of those spaces naturally have their own like coven systems, right? Like, even though you're a bit more solitary practitioners and you've like talked about struggling to find your people, you both have like been in an actual coven, right? And like had concerted group workings, which I've never actually really had. The most people I've had in a circle was probably maybe three or four tops, and out of them maybe two or three of us were very serious about our practicing. Other than that, like, I don't really
Yeah,
have those kind of connections, and I'm not really welcome in those spaces the same way.
I can honestly say I know what you're talking about, Sophia. A really prominent chaos magician and occultist recently passed away. Hail the Traveler.
Carol, right?
Carol, his name
Peter
was.
Carroll.
Yes.
Hi,
Yep.
Peter Carroll.
And there were people who had a lot of really negative opinions about Carol. They were very really harsh, and I was like, the man has really good books out. Like, everyone loves his work. Like, so you feel how you feel about it, but there are people that are doing good work. But Sophia, you're not wrong. I've seen a lot of discussion, and it's funny because like younger generations are really really vibing with chaos magic, which is great. Um, but a lot of the older generations, they take a lot of chaos magic as very like Mm, I want to use my words carefully here. They take it as very childish, I guess, or I've also seen people kind of really disrespectfully and inappropriately say like maybe schizo, right? They've
Mm.
called it, kind of like that, right? And I really hate when they do that for multiple reasons, but also because I disagree. But no, I know what you're talking about, Sophia. It is true. It is true. The ego-centered magician. I mean, this is unfortunately this is historical. We've been egocentric bastards for a long time. Um, we're all kind of the and I say we not because I like to think that I don't do this anymore, but I was once an egotistical little shitbag.
Mm.
Um, and I got out of it. But and the occult, I think that it's. I honestly sometimes think that it is a part of the process. I think that for many of us, it's sort of like sink or swim. Can you break this cycle, or will you stay trapped in this?
Mm.
Hmm.
This ego trap. Will you stay running in circles and
I
building entropy?
I think that's the problem that I have, is like, no matter how much growth you do with your own magic and your own systems, a lot of people will never recognize it unless you're held up to a standard that they recognize, you
Mm.
know?
Yes. Hmm.
Right,
And
like
so,
if you're talking to like someone who's Wiccan, just to use a really common example, and you're like, "Hey, like I've been practicing magic for years. I can do X, Y, and Z. I do these things, whatever." And then, but if you're not like a third degree in whatever, tradition, they might not quite understand what it is you're
well,
talking about.
let me give you a couple hot examples. Down at the crossroads, I can't remember his name because it's been such a hot minute since I've watched his podcast. Corey, um,
No, New World Witchery is Corey. Down at the
Okay,
Crossroads is Chris and Matilda.
it might be New World Witchery I'm thinking of then. But like I was listening to a cult podcast and they were like years ago identifying more with chaos magic and moving in that direction because of like the theory and the availability of what you can do with it and how you can kind of deconstruct what's occurring and gain a greater position of perspective, which is kind of like the overall goal of chaos magic. I don't view it as a syncretic system. I think that's extremely reductionist. I think the whole point of chaos magic is to introduce like that scientific rigor pursuit angle
I
to the
agree.
occult
I
and
agree. It's the
to
science of
see.
magic.
Yeah, well, it's that, but it's also the applied science of magic because like the way I see it is magic is the other side of science. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but they're two sides of the same coin, right?
Hmm.
Because magic is just science that we're not allowed to do as per the mainstream, right?
Mm.
So
And we're also barely
that's
allowed to do regular science now,
I
so
mean, shit, yeah, well, but that's what magic is, right?
Right.
Magic is whatever science is not deemed appropriate by the times. That's why we had like ancient alchemical research happening with the philosophers, and now we have like the table of the periodic table, right? And like mathematics used to have to be kept secret from the fucking church, and
Mm.
geometry, right? Like the structure of what we think of as modern particle physics was literally occult research at one point, right?
Hmm.
So they're congruent. It's the same thing. Magic is just what questions, they're basically different suppositions. Science purports that you should be able to prove something first and like have the theorem and explain it before you accept it into your worldview. And
Mm.
magic says, what can you put into your worldview to change what's being occurred?
Right.
It's just different viewpoints of the same sort of ontology, right? You're looking at getting closer to the greater nature of what can be done, right? Because both of them find security in a question, right? So
Mm.
therefore, to me, chaos magic is extremely valuable because it's introducing enough rigor that you can start breaking down what techniques work and why, but you never stop like going back to the source material. Like I'm literally reading the fucking book of Enoch right now, right? Like
As one does.
I read my past few books that I'm going through right now. I just did Stalking the Wild Pendulum by Itzhak Bentov, which is a
Mm.
phenomenal book. I would love to talk about it on a book club. It's a very short one. It's about 5 hour audiobook.
Mm.
He talks about a resonance theory, which I applied and extrapolated to occult theory, and it's really good because it's a crossover between scientific theorem and occult theorem, and it really
Oh,
fucks, and
resonance.
it
Isn't that like
even
the other
describes
name for energy model? They call that resonance model
kind of.
sometimes.
It's a little different with when he talks about resonance. This is like one of the guys who's like a patent holder for pacemakers, right? So when he
Ah.
talks about resonance, he's talking about how like you put a bunch of metronomes in a room that are out of sync and you leave them for a while and they'll all sync up, right?
Mm.
Um, or how that can then be logically extrapolated to how human heartbeats actually sync up, which is a thing that we've proven called heartbeat synchronization, right?
Mm.
If you spend enough time with somebody and you're close with them, you're not always going to be beating identical, but your heartbeat at rest will like tend towards beating in pattern with each other, right? So
Mm.
like drum circles even were like ceremonial magic back in the day for keeping everybody in the village aligned to a certain energy center, and like people who wouldn't come to these ceremonies and these gatherings would naturally like be more out of beat and out of touch with everybody, and like that's how that kind of like collective kind of worked in ceremony to maintain itself, and you see this in literally every culture in the world, right?
Mm.
So it's interesting, but then again, I could talk for days and days, and this is what isolates me as a chaos magician, right? Because like sometimes chaos magicians are predisposed to just having too much theory and not enough actual like put it into practice, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all of the really harsh judgments that you get as a chaos magician. You're either accused of being like a dabbler, you're being naive or not actually having psychic sight, you're accused of being deceived by like your spirits that you work with and like the gods or goddesses that you invoke, you're accused of not actually understanding the materials that you're working with because you're taking it out of context. Like and there's just an unwillingness to meet you in those generalized spaces, right? So even at like a pagan pride style event out here, I do feel extremely isolated. And like I've gotten just better and better and better at my craft the more that I'm working, to the point where I'm less into chaos magic these days, but like
I'm
it's
curious, like
still
when you meet someone out in the wild, and you get to talking, you find out, oh, yeah, okay,
yeah.
you're into occult magic, we're on the same wavelength. How do you identify these days? Like, do you identify as just a witch? Like, are you, like, how do you identify? How do you
I
define
identify
yourself?
as a problem. I'm gonna be real with you.
Fair.
I don't actually have to really throw labels out like that. I'll just explain it to people in reference points, because
Like, you'll just be
labels
like, I do
are,
magic, or I practice magic,
I'll be
or...
like, I'm a hardcore occultist, or
Right.
like I write occult theory, or like I will say something that gives the gravitas for how the level of involved I am, if that's what I'm trying to convey to them at the moment. Or I will
Mm.
just explain, like, if there's somebody who's tangentially interested, that I'm like very involved in the occult, right? I wouldn't necessarily like explain shit, you know?
Hmm.
But
So you kind of
it just
identify as an
depends.
occultist, essentially. You're like, I am an
I like
occultist.
I will use the word occultist because
Mm.
it is a reference point that is
Right,
widely
yeah.
understood. When I
So
say
that's the
witch,
term you're
people,
using when you're talking
I
to people.
suppose, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say witch occasionally too, right?
Mm.
But it depends. What I do is I load my words based on who I'm speaking to try and get a
Right.
greater semantic overlap to have them understand what I'm talking about. So if somebody doesn't know anything about magic at all, I'll call myself a witch,
Yeah.
right? Because that conveys the severity to my practice, right? Um, if somebody knows a lot about magic, I will tell them that I am a post-modern, I'd say I'm like a post-chaos magic, and I'm working into building a new type of system that gets away from the trappings and methodology therein, right? And if
Mm.
it's somebody who's intermediate, I'm probably going to say I'm a pretty heavy occultist and I've been doing it for like 20 years, right? So
Right.
it's all reference points. I don't necessarily like to call myself a certain something, you know? Because
Hmm.
what does that even fucking mean, you know?
Right. I
Yeah,
agree.
more. Mhm.
No, go ahead, Scott.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, lately I find cunning person works best for me.
Hmm.
I am still a witch because, like, it. I think it also matters because of how I'm defining witch lately. I mean, don't
Mm.
get me wrong. I am still a witch in the sense of everything that we've always talked about, right? That we've always talked about on this podcast. I still am a witch, and I still believe that the witch is a liberator and whatever. I just find that cunning person opens up communication a little easier.
Mm.
I could talk to people a little bit better about what it is that I do. And I'm not met with as much uh,
Bias.
bias and pushback. And they become a little bit more interested because people think that they understand what witchcraft is now. And having to explain to people witchcraft as I see it, witchcraft as I practice it, is becoming more and more exhausting
Yeah.
because it's so popular and people are like, "Oh, well, jar spells and TikTok and that's their frame of reference." And a lot of the so-called rules that they think are in place and what they think is and isn't good and bad and indifferent, what they think is stupid, and I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Okay." I'm a
Yeah.
cunning person, and this means that I am somebody who works with and on the land that I am on. I use the spirits that are local to me to work magic, as well as spirits that are familial, and part of my heritage to work magic for people, right? And myself and the world around me. I am, and I will also say I am a witch, because witch has become something like queer,
Mm.
for me, right? Which is very much for me like queer. It's identity. It's also a statement of position, of political position and sociological. You know what I mean? It's a
Hmm.
position to hold. Philosophy. Um, And you know, I also say that classically the witch was somebody who worked both hands, and technically speaking, that is also me. You know what I mean? So cunning person and witch still hold for me. I just tend to lead with cunning person because it's easier to talk about it.
Mm.
It's easier to talk about it from
Which can be
cultural
polarizing.
these, and it's really just because I'm tired of having to be like,
Right. Oh,
people are
that
like,
kind of
no,
sucks, actually. So, like, okay. When when we started our sort of like witchcraft kind of journey, right? Like when we were that kind of age, it was like, I'm a witch, it was like, it was still a little like, oh, what? Like
mhm,
witchcraft? Like, oh, that's, wasn't that stuff from the 80s, that satanic panic shit? And then
right.
like now, I'm not gonna say because of TikTok, it would have been whatever
No, no.
platform, but like now it's popular, right? Harry Potter threw it into the spotlight, and then a lot of other magic fantasy themed media happened after that really kept
Mhm.
pushing it. And also, I just think subconsciously, like within the psyche of the human race, like we need some kind of spirituality, so a lot of us are finding this, right? But like, yeah, it does kind of suck now because like if you say like I'm a witch, it doesn't carry the gravitas. I do like that term, Sophie. It doesn't carry that same
Mhm.
kind of. It doesn't convey the fact that I've been studying the occult for 20 years. If you say I'm a
Right.
witch, and
It
like
seems,
the kid who just
yeah.
picked up a book at the shelf next to you with their first tarot deck and their first crystal, are like, I'm a witch, and you're like, yes,
Oh my
but
god.
But
Or like
you're like a
when
level
somebody's
one.
newer when somebody's newer and unskilled and offers to read my tarot, the answer is always no. Because
Hmm.
like they don't realize how much there's an observer effect that's imparted, and like actually, I'm gonna be real with you. There's literally one person in the world I currently let read my cards. I would probably let Scott read my cards. No shade, Jay. It's just I don't know like how much practice you have with cards. If you did feel confident, I would let you because I trust you. But like
I read
the
plenty of
amount of people,
cards. I just don't
yeah.
read tarot. I read
Oh, that's
Lenormand
fair.
or Oracle decks. I just don't read
hmm
tarot.
but like I trust y'all to not have like imparted bias, but there's a lot of people
Hmm.
who's like they will impart their subtle views of you
Yes.
based off of like what your system is or how they view you as an occultist or like you as a person. There's like a lot of slant that can happen in readings of people, and I don't necessarily like it because people don't realize how strong the observer effect is. And my big gripe with divination done uncarefully is that it can often cause a series of events that was not predetermined to happen to come into causality stronger than it should be, and then you have to like work to either circumvent something that's unhelpful or like be stuck to something that you didn't necessarily agree or will to. You know what I mean? Because like certain events are, as I see it, relatively unchangeable, and it's not like because we don't have free will, but because like free will applied on a large enough scale wouldn't look like individual choices that you've done. It would look like an inevitability that was always going to occur based off of who you were and what you were navigating, right? But in those moments, you're still going to have the freedom to make those choices, but that's what creates the end point of destiny, right? What has occurred will occur and will already occur, but you're choosing to do it in the moment, and that's what makes the like actual treading through this space, right? So yes, free will exists, but the future is already completely determinate, basically, which is fucking terrifying to think about.
Yep. And that's where, when you're in a group of people and they're not quite at your level of like occult
Yeah.
theory, they're like, the fuck did you just
The
say to
fuck did you
me?
just say to me? Right?
Right.
Yes.
They can't grasp the idea of these things, right? And I mean, this is, see, for me, like, I would just keep myself safe. I wouldn't think that they would have and if I got by that, I would feel very silly. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, I like to let them like read because I want them to practice.
That's what I
I
was
always
gonna
keep my
say.
guard up.
I'm a teacher type person, so if someone is
Yes,
new,
same.
I'm gonna be like,
Right.
yeah, man, sure. Let's,
Right.
read me. Go for
But
it.
But I will, like, but I'm also, you have to remember too, like, I'm old school, right? So, like, although, like, the folk magician wouldn't say it in the words that Sophia used, right? For us, it would be like you could change the fate, if you will, of a person, right? You could change the outcome once you know it.
Change the
That's
weird.
something, and so, like, but the idea was the same, right? There is something about divination that gives you an edge, right? You know something, and therefore you have power over it.
Hmm.
And
But you have to be careful on how you wield that, otherwise that can have power over you, as it did with Odin, and that's the great lesson of a lot of the old
right.
stories.
And that's why divination is not, like, a lot of people. This is why I kind of get weird with, like, I used to love divination as like a party game, but
Mm.
as I grew, I'm kind of like,
Like,
let's not, uh, you
My
know.
my principle of divination is I'm actually extremely skilled at it. I only do it upon request, and I only don't even tell people that I do it. But when people know that I'm into the occult, and they be like, "Hey, do you read cards?" I'll be like, yes. And they're like, "Can you read mine?" The answer is always yes. I will never turn down somebody for a card reading, and I will never charge them. As long as they're not like a complete stranger, I won't do that for somebody I don't know. But if you're like even kind of an acquaintance and I have a reason to, and it's not going to be laborious for me to do so, I will give you the reading without issue or without money. And they're utterly soul crushingly accurate at what I call out, and it's fun, right? Like there's this one time I threw cards for this girl, and she was like asking about a situation with a stalker, and I was like, so I'm getting a lot of romantic interference here and like jealousy. So is there like, is it a situation where there's a girl who's mad at you because of a romantic situation between you and a guy? And she's like, "What the fuck? How did you fucking know that? There's no way. Like I'm convinced you're a witch now. There's no question about it." Right?
divination is always the way to convince people of your powers.
Well, I mean, I'm not even trying to convince them of my powers when I do it too. What I'm actually doing, where I feel like it comes from an ontologically more air quotations pure, because I hate the word pure. I
Mm.
find it more aligned to try and do the divination for the sake of proving divination or that aspect of spirituality to a person. It's not about proving my powers; it's about proving the existence of that power itself. And coming at
Exactly,
it from
yeah.
a depersonalized state allows me to be more empowered. I can understand how other people need to work that in a different way. Like, let's say that you are a career diviner or fortune teller, then building the gravitas, again, yes, I love that word, you just said that,
It's good.
around your practice, your performance, your cards, your deck choices, all of these things, right? Maybe you do need to get that rare $500 deck because that's the one that you're going to like keep in a really nice bag with like the gold inlay that you're like whipping out for that high quality client that you're actually making money for, right? It, it it's a career when you make it like that, right?
Mm.
So those people will operate it in a bit of a different way that's more personalized to them, and I can't really speak for that, right? But just for me personally, I wouldn't consider myself a diviner, but I am someone who is excellent at divining.
Mm.
So I mean, that's, yeah, the young people, that I love that you said that though, Jay, about
Mm.
young people. Like, I'm a witch too,
Right.
that that was that yeah.
And it's
I
like
find with
you can hold the space to validate them. You're like, yeah, you are a witch.
Of course.
Excellent. You're just starting.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. But like, don't be like, I just picked up a book a week ago and you're wrong. And it's like, well,
oh
I'm
my
all
god.
for a debate, so let's do it, but you better have your facts straight.
So one thing I actually loathe quite a bit is when I came into this scene, I was very respectful of my elders. If
You
somebody had
have
been
to be.
practicing for 20 fucking years, I sat down and shut the fuck up and I
Yep.
listened to what they had to say. Okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
There is a huge trend with modern occultists who will find themselves with like really well educated teachers, and they have an inability to take any of the advice given, and it's really frustrating because like when you're in those circumstances, I've like said to people in this instance, I wish I had 20%
Of
of the
what you
information
have.
that's present to you right here right now in this space, between books, direct conversation, and links and guides and sources, right?
Yep. And
You
people
have
older than us say the same shit about our generation, you know?
exactly. Well, actually, no. People older than us actually have said that millennials were pretty fucking good about listening and wanting to come in and learn that knowledge. Like,
I meant
read.
access to material.
Oh,
Like, I'm sure
yes,
people older
yes.
than us were like, oh, if we had access to half the shit, just the internet
20%.
alone,
Yeah,
just
of course.
was
I
wild.
mean, like, pre-internet, the struggle of trying to find any kind of a cult book that wasn't just gobbledygook. The first real
Mhm.
one I actually found was Jason Miller, Sorcerer's Secrets. And
Mm.
I wasn't even at a point where I was ready to even like go through most of that because that is not a fucking 101 book. That's like a
No.
intermediate to advanced book. You
It
get into
is,
like
yeah.
breaths and meditations and like actual energy working. Like a 101 is much different. And like I'd say 99.9% of the 101 books that you're going to find at like a Barnes and Noble styled store or like whatever the fuck you're getting it from, Indigo chapters, like they're not going to be what you really need. If you're lucky, you'll find a Buckthorn, you'll find a Zakroff, you'll find I absolutely loathe the prevalence at which Crowley is kept and carried,
Mm.
because there's precisely one text of his that I find useful, which is Liber Legis, the Book of the Law, and to be able to understand and utilize it, you have to be advanced at least, if not past advanced. Like, if you were to do like lodge ranking systems, Adeptus Major is when that book is more useful. But even then, by that point, you've kind of already gained that type of knowledge, right?
Mm.
And it's
Hmm.
more just like insights and like, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about, right? But like, I don't find Liber Legis to be fucking revelatory, and that there's no real pedestal with which Crowley should be placed upon because he doesn't actually provide anything of real substance, more than say like John Dee would, or um I'm about to go through Agrippa. I can't remember which one of his I have. Um yeah, so I don't know, it's interesting. That's the problem, right? Is like in pre-internet spaces, those books, a lot of the really good occult books, you'd have to know the specialty shop, and the specialty shops would struggle to stay open, and you'd like have to know somebody, and you'd like pass notes between each other. And like one of the single most fucking valuable things in an occult book was the recommended reading section at the back,
Hmm.
because then you have all of these other
The
texts, and the
trail.
more of them you find, the more that you find, and a web opens up. And then like finding your first real occult book is a fucking challenge. Actually, the real first occult book I found before the Jason Miller one was, it's terrible, Manly P Hall's Occult Science or Hidden Forces.
Mm. I
It's
don't.
very, I hate Manly P. Hall. He's very square peg round hole and very white man racist reductionist. So
Mm.
um I did not enjoy that text, and because of that I didn't read the vast majority of his other shit until like much later when I would go through Secret Teaching of All Ages, which is only relatively useful insofar as, again, it's a great reference text, but the theory he's building overall is square peg round hole as fuck, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, I even wonder what's going to happen with the occultists of the next generation, right? Are they going to take our teachings and run with them? Are they going to sit on them for a long time? Is like chaos magic going to rise to prevalence because of like the granular theory interface? Is that going to like lead to a prevalence of armchairism, or are they going to be able to transcend their own like limitations, right?
What
Is
I hope,
chemagnostics going to be a bigger thing? Sorry, go ahead.
what I hope doesn't happen, though. I was thinking back to your post, Scott. You had posted on Facebook about the robot that they made a
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist monk or something like
Oh my
that.
god.
In South Korea, they did a they were doing formal like the formal induction of new monks into their temple, and one of them was an AI robot, and it was a formal
Kill it.
ceremony for an AI I mean, there were other real life human monks, but that's not my problem was there was a formal ceremony for an AI robot. They
Yeah.
put oversized gloves on him, and they put him in regalia, or it, I say him, it in regalia, and it was like, I'm not a Buddhist, but
Felt
it
weird.
just felt wrong. It just
Mm.
felt wrong.
Yeah, and I agree. I had the same feeling on that. I have
So
been kind of anti robot AI type things for a long time, ever since that
y'all
fucking
want
Will
to hear my
Smith movie came
crazy
out.
fucking theory?
Hmm.
I think what they're trying to do is ritualize these things to conjure specific daimon or consciousness into them, and that's the whole game behind them. Is
Ugh.
that they're trying to utilize them as a technocratic way of like directly interfacing with these energies that may be angelic or demonic, whatever goals meet their ends. Because it
Can't
just, if you
download
look at
God.
everything that's happening, they've been trying to do the whole basilisk thing, the whole god thing. Like they're literally trying to make actual spirit contact through a uh type of homunculus that's digitally crafted, right?
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, they're trying to create life, and they're life
Why
in their own
else?
image. Like it's weird,
Yeah.
and I understand that like humans have a need to create, right? And I think about a lot of the mythology, right, of the gods creating, the world, whatever culture that may be of. And what is common in those stories is that the gods appear to have this innate desire, innate need and function within them that they have to create. They have to create the land. They have to create this, the rivers, and then they have to create the animals, and they have to create us, because that's just part of how they function. They
Mm-hmm.
have to create. And I think humans are incredibly similar to that. We do that through art, through cooking, through music. Like, yeah, like, do we have to eat food to sustain ourselves? Yes, but some people like cook. You know what I mean? Like some people just like
Mm-hmm.
it's their love language, it's their art, it's their passion. And I think like that drive to create is there in everyone. It gets ground down for multiple reasons, because of the man-made constructs in which we live within our society. But those things are there, and I think we are so much more similar to the gods than people like realize. Like they're not these like far away abstract entities. They are us. We
Real
are
talk.
them.
And
Reading
if
through the Book of Enoch makes me want to throw up. Sorry, you go ahead, Scott, before I jump onto this train.
I know I was just gonna kind of make a shameless little self plug here. I was gonna say, and if you'd like to know Scott's opinions on why it is that we're so like the gods, please see my first blog post on the Witches Betwixt blog, because my
Yes,
opinion is there, and it's just my
Oh,
opinion.
Scott, I
I
love
mean,
you.
I love it.
Um,
Shameless plugs. Check out the blog.
I, on a side note similar to that, I have been writing a lot more, but my writing keeps working in a way where it's working for my book, like organically. So I can send PDFs of the individual articles that are going to inform the second half of my book, which is the esoteric part. Because there's like a bunch of essays, prose, and like other things that'll help with that. I wrote some real fucking bangers. One of them's on it's not even occult based, but it really applies supremely to the occult. It's called Intuitive Allowance, and it's about like the state of mastery and like flow states and a little bit Zen without trying to be about Zen. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So yeah, I've been writing. Um, so here's my fucking thing I was gonna say. Have any of y'all read the Book of Enoch?
I
Red.
have not, but
No, I'm
it's
aware
funny
of it.
because one of my teachers who taught me conjure, actually, I was just thinking about her. Her family were brought up in the spiritualist church, and
Mm-hmm.
they were deep Southern, and there was a lot of spiritualism, deep Southern spiritualism, and she got into this. I don't even know what kind of denomination this was. Their holiest book was the Book of Enoch,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's like part conjure woman, part spiritualist, part I don't know exactly what this she considered it a Christian denomination, but it would definitely be a very fringy
Mm.
um
Yeah.
thing. And she carried her Book of Enoch everywhere. It was this beautiful white faux leather with like golden, faux gold writing on it, folio writing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, yeah. But so like I know that for a lot of people the Book of Enoch is really really important.
Yeah. So why it makes me want to throw up is like reading the first few chapters. It's literally describing exactly what we're going through right now, and you know it's never a good thing when like literal fucking like Sumerian texts are talking about the type of end time shit that you're having
Right, like when you
to
read about
live through.
Ragnarok shit and you're like, oh, wait a minute, hold on.
Uh, Except like this is extremely like literal, and it's like
Mm.
actually a little gut wrenching at points. You're like, fuck me running, right? So it's been interesting. I'm just saying. If you go through it, you'll see some parallels. And the most interesting thing I've noted that I want to talk about is Nephilim, because they keep coming up via synchronicity. And I honestly, they talk about them like consuming all the acquisitions of man. That's literally their words. They consumed all the acquisitions of man, yet they did not eat of food. Right? What does that sound like to you?
Billionaires.
These, well, yes, but giant bodies bigger
Data
than
centers.
corporations.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Like all of the
But
above
in
kind of
particular,
thing.
I was thinking the data
Yeah,
centers because they like literally suck up all the water in the
it's
fucking area.
absolutely an emanation of it.
Yeah.
History is like such a fucking flat circle that like the story of the Nephilim is literally occurring through how like corporations and modern society occur. Like go read it yourself and tell me it's not a one-to-one analog, because it is, right? There it says they consumed all the acquisitions of man, and when that could no longer sustain them, they feasted upon men in humanity instead.
Yeah, that checks out.
That's literally everything that's happening.
Mm.
They've taken all of our acquisitions, and when that was not enough, they've started to deprive us of our literal ability to eat and house ourselves, and are actively trying to kill us by taking all the public wealth and reducing the public. And people are really starting to wake up to this, that like the billionaires aren't like
They're not
deliberately trying to
helping.
destabilize the
Yeah.
system so that we can all die. It's not like an accident. It's not a bug, it's a feature, right?
Right, like this is being orchestrated. You know, this
Yes.
whole like collapse thing is being orchestrated. Um I was thinking earlier when you were talking, you were talking about the Book of Enoch, and that kind of ties into back what we were talking about kind of in the beginning of this episode, is like the struggles and difficulties sometimes of making connections within occult spheres, because like you're just like, yeah, I'm reading the Book of Enoch, this, that, and a third, and like if this was a different sort of environment, there might be someone that's like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is the
Yes.
Book of Enoch? Or there on the flip side, there could be a person, well, did you read this particular translation, the one done by blah 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 blah? Like it can go, like a completely million different ways, and if you don't read that translation, well, that's not the accurate one, and blah blah blah. So
Weirdly enough, I find people are much less hostile when you speak to them via voice. It's often like the coldness of text that makes them
yes.
come off as like heartless and
And also,
domineering.
I think there's this really cool thing that some of us need to start doing a little more. I do it often when I talk to people. Is I don't know. I genuinely don't know anything about that. It's okay to not know about things. Like
Oh,
you
all
don't
the
have to
time. I don't
know
know why there's this. So
everything.
that ties to like this weird egocentricity thing in the West, where like people will also take their opinions being proven wrong personally, as though like being wrong is some like condemnation of character. But I can tell you why it's applied and how it's applied. So
Hmm.
for example, I had a friend who I repeated something that sounded very realistic without looking it up, and then she looked it up and it turned out to be incorrect. And then later on, when I said something else, she's like, "You got this wrong, though." Like, truth becomes a currency that people like to monopolize. And if you get something wrong, there becomes this like interaction where you're supposed to treat somebody else who had the information correct as though they know better than you and that they're your
Right.
better. Like the implication of being right carries some type of like social connotation of hierarchy, right? And that's why I've actually even started to move away from that type of language. I like the words correct or incorrect, because
Mm-hmm.
it's depersonalized. It doesn't speak to whether or not you are right or wrong, because you're talking about things that you think that you've learned, but it's not like we're scientists personally, and maybe you are, but maybe you're a biologist and you're still running off of another physicist's assertions, right? Like we're all running with the pieces of what somebody else has put together, and we don't have the ability to verify all of the information therein, right? So like we have to operate under some type of like mutually assured grace where we're not holding each other to these unrealistic standards of like, oh, you got this thing wrong, now you have to like treat me as though I'm always right because I fact checked a couple of minor things before interacting with you in this conversation, you know?
I
And
know.
those exact types of people will also needlessly ignore other times that they've been wrong when it positions them as the greater social clout of being correct. Because intelligence isn't actually measured societally by how free you can think or how malleable you can reposition or adapt to new information. It's often simply expressed or understood as just being correct, which is or being right, which is an extremely reductive way of expressing knowledge. And it's an artifact of our education system, right? Like tests, you're getting the right answer and the wrong answer, you know?
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong because like you could get all the answers right on some kind of exam or test, but that just means you're able to memorize. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the ability to memorize is not intelligence. You know,
Well,
like
it is related. Like some like if you can remember pi to 100,000 decimal places, you cannot
sure,
tell me that's not intelligence, right?
right,
Um,
but just
and sometimes, sorry, go ahead.
memorization in and of itself, you know, it doesn't mean that you're like you could memorize a bunch
Sure.
of scientific facts, but like, do you know what they mean? You know, like, do you
Well,
fundamentally
and even then,
understand?
you could understand the meaning. It's like the old argument of like the map is not the territory, and we need to
Mm-hmm.
like be a little bit better at having the discretion between the two, you know?
Mm-hmm. Um,
Mhm.
but we are up at an hour now. Scott, earlier, I know you said that you had a story to share.
Yeah, I thought
Let's hear
people
it.
would really interesting. So yesterday I had to like pull myself out of my couch because I didn't feel like going to the gym, but I did it anyway. And on my way there, I rounded the corner, just around the corner from my house, and me and this lady made eye contact. And it was a very like not like there wasn't a thing, you know what I mean? Like there was nothing to this encounter. We were walking past one another, we made eye contact, and all of a sudden I got this sharp pain right through my right eye.
mm,
And I was like, ow. And it like partly felt like something was in my eye and then partly not. It was weird.
or like, did a
And
bug
like
fly in my eye or
right, but
weird? Yeah.
it was weird. It was just a really bizarre. And then all of a sudden, I kind of like instinctually was like, without ever even meaning to like think about it, I was like, shit. I'm like,
Mm.
it's not that, it's not that. But I did I did my signatura, my Italian uh
Evil
magical gang
eye.
signs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Magical
the
gang signs.
thing. And
Jesus Christ.
I did that, and the pain went away.
Mm.
And as I'm walking, I start to feel my shoulders get really heavy, and I start to get really dizzy. I started to get like kind of like off, really just felt heavy. And I was like, shit. And
Mm.
then I made it a couple blocks up from what is it, Oregon or
Mm.
Broad Street, and I ran across, and it feels so. And you guys know I'm big with like being careful with omens, right? You guys know
Mm-hmm.
how
Right.
I feel about that. It was a blackbird beheading a sparrow. It
Oh,
was literally, and the sparrow was still like trying to flap, even though its head was halfway off.
A
And I was
blackbird
like,
killing another
"Fuck."
bird? A bird killing another bird?
happens all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it happens
Mm.
all the time.
Animals are territorial as fuck.
Mm.
And like two little sparrows were trying to fight for it, but when I walked past it, I had this like my
Mm.
stomach like sunk, and I knew in that moment I was like shit.
Mm.
So I trudged through the gym, but the whole time I felt weak, I felt dizzy, and then I woke up today, and like I was in the shower when you had texted me, Jay,
Mm.
and I was like I was still feeling like crap, and I made sure to eat breakfast, and I was like, before I go on this podcast, I'm going to do the cure. I didn't have olive oil, which is traditional. I had grapeseed oil. And
Mm.
I was like, you know what, as a folk magician, I was like, in the Bible it talks about the grapevine. Jesus himself is said to have mentioned it. So I was like, I'm going to use grapeseed oil. And I used grapeseed oil, and it's so funny because I also ended up, my mom wanted the diagnostic too, and I did it for her. We both had it. She got it from work, I think. But literally, as semi-instantaneously, which is the thing I love about the old magic like that. It felt like I don't know. It felt like a weight just
Mm.
lifted
Hmm.
right off my shoulders. It was crazy.
Wow.
I know.
Generations of practice culminated to moments like that.
Man, people just throwing the super evil eye out these
I don't
days,
know. I really
handing it
Well,
out like
honestly though,
candy.
I don't really think she even meant it, to be honest.
Mm.
It just whatever it was, whatever her first thoughts, whatever that impression of me that she got in that that couple of minutes of walking towards each other,
hmm
I guess it just launched out of her. Some people are
Mm.
just both prone to getting it, which is something that a lot of the folklore talks about. Some people just get it more easily,
Mm.
and then also some people can give it easier than other people.
yeah,
Intentionally.
some people are like almost unable to do it even when they try, and some people can do it without even like knowing they're capable of it.
Mm.
Yeah, I honestly think that's what happened because my
So
mom was
also
upset.
though, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I'm sorry. I was saying my mom was upset. She was like, "Do a reversing spell on that bitch." I was
Real
like,
talk
I don't.
though, people who have the evil eye will throw it just to practice it. I'm not kidding. Like that type of person who curses very often looks for targets, right? And if
It's true.
you catch their eye, if you have a visible protective item, they'll often take it as an invitation of, oh, you got a ward up that I can see. Cool.
Mm.
Let's see how protective it is. And no offense, I do know that you do often have a Six of Mars visibly showing. So
Mhm.
people can often be like, ah, let me hit you because I see your ward, right? And it's a
Yeah.
shitty fucking practice, but it happens,
But
right?
it happens all the time. It
Yep.
does. Being in occult spaces, especially with other occultists, even
Hmm.
even whether it's online or not, like you all know, I am I
I
am for whatever reason, I have after all this time in this community in one way or another, I've unfortunately made enemies
Look,
with
we all do. Like, I'm gonna be dead ass with you on this. I've been to goth dance spaces where, like, guys I've seen, like, doing little hand motions and, like, trying to, like, do things on me with, like, their intent, and I can, like, knock it off, and they'll be like, what the fuck? And I've, like, seen them get visibly annoyed about not being able to probe into me, right? And, like, just because I'm a hot girl doesn't mean I'm not a practicing occultist, and just because I don't have a Six of Mars openly displayed does not mean that I do not have a silver pressed one in my pocket next to a wooden dais of Hecate. Like, bruh, like,
Casually, as one does. Come on.
like, I
it's
mean,
also it's
go
also in
ahead.
part my fault because my stuff needs to like be appropriately like charged. I
Hmm.
haven't properly charged it in a minute, and
Day of Saturn or Day of Mars, Hour of Mars, bud. It's the best time to
yeah.
do it. Get a little Mars oil, get that going, conjure them spirits, maybe feed them some spicy alcohol. Like I would assume that Fireball would work really well.
Oh, I
That
used
probably
to
would
drink
work really
Fireball.
nice. Darian still does, but
It's too
Me too.
sugary.
well,
Too
he's not right
sugary.
now. But yeah, which
Whiskey
no,
and
I
Fireball would be. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just I've just been it honestly, it's just been I've been lazy. I've been exhausted and I'm trying to work on building my habits back up, like my good
Completely
habits.
understandable.
It's just, man, oh man.
I will
Life is
say,
hard, but
I've
no,
you've actually helped me, Scott. Even though you've been a little lazy, maybe. You helped me, actually. I've
I'm
been
glad.
lighting my altars. I've had you in my head, uh, lately. Just light your fucking
Mhm.
altar. If anything, just light it. Get in front of
Yo,
Yeah,
it,
real
light
talk.
it.
yeah.
I actually did something today. I have a Cernios candle, Cernunos, depending on how you say the Green Man. And I've been sitting on it for a while as just like an altar item, but it's been so fucking continuously cold. had the realization that I was like being called to burn it as like an invocation to wake him up with the spring, right? And it's probably partial as to why it's been so cold relative where I'm at, even though it doesn't make sense for like where everything is around. It snowed last fucking Saturday while I was on my way to work. Like, get the fuck out of here, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's not quite appropriate weather.
and like as I was lighting that candle and burning it today and putting it in like a cup that could fit it, I had to like cut pieces off of it, right? And I'm like thinking about it, and I'm like, it's funny. If I had held on to this like it's just meant to be an art piece, I wouldn't really do anything with it. And it would just be like an image, it would be an aesthetic, right? But to like use it in my practice, it means destroying it. It means consuming it. It means that something I wanted to maybe use as like a dedication towards this spirit, when I wanted to call it, or this being, and I have to like let go. And that's also part of his lessons of like the seasons change, and like the new growth comes and the old growth dies, and like it's almost like
He
it wouldn't warm
sacrifices
up until I lit that
himself.
fucking candle. Yeah. And it's funny too, because I've been like hella waiting for the occult shop that I go to here called the Hermit's Lamp to get more of these candles in from the lady who presses them, but they've just been out for like months, and I'm just like, fuck it, it's not gonna happen until I burn it. Like, this is life's lesson. You can't hold on constantly. You have to let go, waiting for the next thing to come in. You can't always be assured that it's there. Like, that's the process of learning to fucking walk, is you have to know that the next leg's going to be there when you take that step, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I totally just went on the Hermit's Lamp's website.
They're
It's got like
actually legit. There's two occult shops in Toronto I will say no bad things about, and it's literally the occult shop and the Hermit's Lamp. There's probably others, like Pia's Boutique is great, Piya. But they're less an occult shop and more like incense, spiritual items from like Eastern practices, and like a little bit of like indigenous items they'll carry to like service the local community.
That's
So
cool.
yeah. But yeah, check out the Hermit's Lamp if you're like local relative to Toronto. They're like fucking awesome. I love the people who work there, and they're very trans friendly, and they have like stickers on their computer that say trans people are a delight. I'm like, oh.
Oh, well, that's
Oh.
wonderful. Not
They
often.
currently have a Tarochi deck. It's a restoration of the Adam C. De Hauta tarot. Oh my god. And of course it's like a reconstruction. It's like $127, but it's
Yep.
gorgeous.
They have some
Oh.
really nice stuff in there. They have like a rare books, like
I feel like you're like an
cabinet.
anime character right now, Scott. Like the drooling, like oh.
Look, I'm gonna be real. We're all like anime characters in our shit. Like, you guys know my backstory. It's anime characters, fucking like what I go through and what I do. Same thing for Scott. Same thing for Jay. Like, we kind of like have these like weird mundane lives, except mine's not that mundane. I'm like a girl doing magic, like fighting evil by moonlight, making movies by daylight,
Yeah.
and sometimes moonlight.
Darren always compares me to the triple X Holic. Holic. It's just called Holic.
Oh yeah.
With was it Watanuki? Darren always was like, "You're Watanuki," and I was like, "I'm," and I'm like, "I hate you." He's like, "You draw
So
ghosts."
funny. But no, like sometimes like a person is a real life anime character, and like anytime you feel like you want to be that, I'm like promising you don't. It's not very fun. You have a lot of fucking responsibility, and you're tied to a type of causal chain that your regular people aren't. Like, destiny is not always the most fun thing to have. Yes, it gives you greater ability that you incur through magic and causality, but also you are bound to a tighter causal curvature.
We are at like a minute and 13.
Yep.
Any sort of concluding thoughts for
man.
today?
Do drugs, question everything. Don't just conform because somebody else is doing something. Don't do drugs if they're bad for you and you know that you have like a family history of it probably not being a good idea. Don't even take my advice if it doesn't make sense. Like really, like you gotta do you for you and fuck what everybody else says.
Yeah, I like that. So like I guess mine would be very similar. Question everything, including me. Um, I also want to say fuck the systems of oppression that are killing and hurting people.
Hmm.
Um,
They gotta go.
fuck the industrial war complex. Uh, fuck the American government. Fuck the Israeli government.
Hmm.
Um, keep fighting for one another. Don't be fascist dickheads. And I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.
Never give up. Never surrender. Never go
Oh,
quietly into that night.
magic.
Be
Light
a
your altar.
motherfucker. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, all of this is great. Yeah, I'll echo what you just said there, Scott. Light your altars.
Mhm.
Light your altars. And also label your fucking jars. That's what Matilda always says. Label your fucking jars.
Punch the devil in the dick unless he's your friend, then punch an archon in the dick. Really just
Right.
like punch your enemies in the dick.
There you
Pretty
go.
much that.
Alrighty. We're gonna head out of here. We will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye
We'll see
bye.
you in the next one. Bye everyone.
Bye.